to the faceless and a voice to the voiceless, that we may recognize Christ in them and hear His story in theirs.
Rejoice, refresh, renew, and reflect. Join us for an hour of music that uplifts the soul. Listen to your favorite Jesuit music ministry artists. This is JMM Radio. Get your day's dose of inspirational music. Tune in to JMM Radio every Wednesday, only here on Radyo Katipunan 87.9 FM. Radyo Katipunan 87.9 FM.
The fire we reported at the old fire hall is still burning out.
Do you sometimes feel confused or lost in the complications and complexities of life? Do you feel drained, listless, or exhausted from the daily burdens and responsibilities? Why not seek our campus ministers on air every Tuesday from 2 to 3 in the afternoon? Listen to our counselors from the Loyola School's Campus Ministry Office as they ground our lives in our faith, in our school's spiritual tradition. Campus Ministers on Air. Be guided, be inspired, be blessed. Listen to our Campus Ministers on Air.
Tara na't simulan ang inyong umaga sa mga magagandang refleksyon tungkol sa ating buhay at pananampalataya. Kasama sina Father J. Boy Gonzales at Father Nono Alfonso ng Kapisanan ni Jesus, Binibining Risa Singson Kaupeng ng Feast Magazine, Father Fiel Pareha mula sa Archdiocese ng San Fernando, Pampanga, at Cardinal Luis Antonio Tagle. Dito sa Kapet Pandasal sa Radyo Katipunan 87.9 FM.
Radyo Katipunan 87.9 FM.
Friends, Romans, countrymen, lend me your ear.
Do you long for a good spiritual read? Or for literature that not only feeds the mind, but nourishes the soul as well? Do you want to be inspired, feel positive and hopeful about life? Then read The Windhover, the official magazine of the Jesuits in the Philippines. Written by Jesuits and their lay partners, The Windhover features real stories about the Jesuits and their various ministries. Be inspired. Be blessed. Subscribe to The Windhover. For inquiries, call the Philippine Jesuit Aid Association at telephone numbers 426-6001, locals 4890 or 4892. Once again, Philippine Jesuit Aid Association, telephone numbers 426-6001, locals 4890 or 4892.
Keep the Word of God strong in our lives. Keep the spirit of hope and the grace of healing alive every day. Keep the faith. Join us every morning for the celebration of the Holy Eucharist with the Jesuits from the Philippine province. Keep the faith. Daily Mass with the Jesuits streams from Monday to Sunday at 8 o'clock in the morning on Radyo Katipunan's Facebook page, YouTube channel, Twitter feed, and other social media partners. Radyo Katipunan. News, insights, inspiration. Radyo Katipunan. Down from the hill and down to the world. Radyo Katipunan. The voice of the Blue Eagle.
Radyo, 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 Radyo Katipunan. Radyo Katipunan. Radyo Katipunan. Radyo, Radyo, Radyo Katipunan. Radyo, Radyo, Radyo Katipunan. Sa The Blue Eagle kami di mapipigil sa pagbabalitang tumpak at tama. Buhay at tenista sa loob sa labas ng eskwela, ating ibibida lahat ng kwela. Radyo, Radyo, Radyo Katipunan. Radyo, Radyo, Radyo Katipunan. Radyo Katipunan. Radyo Katipunan.
gimnasyo, Katipunero, sugod, todo sa kayod, dunong at tulog. Lipat na Blue Eagle, galing giting nagigil. Blue and white, one big fight. Radyo, 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 Katipunan. Radyo, 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 Katipunan. Radyo, Katipunan.
Welcome to RK Sports, where we take you right into the action with the highlights, insights, and analysis of the sports scene in, around, across, and beyond the Ateneo. With your hosts, Anthony Perez and Mookie Borja. Katipunan. Game on.
Hello, hello. What is up, Blue Eagle Nation? This is Anthony bringing you another exciting edition of Radyo Katipunan Sports on this Thursday afternoon. I know it's hot outside, it's traffic, but Mookie and I are here to give you some chill down.
Yeah.
So afternoon chill down on this episode. So we are live again via Radyo Katipunan on Facebook, on YouTube, on 87.9 on your FM band. And joining me as always is Mookie B. And Mookie, before we begin our episode today, cue in trumpets and one shining moment because this episode is all gonna be about college ball. All right, March Madness edition, where of course Mookie, we are all witnesses to the first back-to-back national champion since the 2006-2007 Florida Gators, which I watched with the Horford, Noah, Corey Brewer, that type of lineup. So, congratulations to University of Connecticut, UConn, now joining UCLA, North Carolina, Kentucky, as programs with 6+ national titles.
Wow. Impressive. They've honestly, there's a lot of news after they won about being the best program of the 21st century. And honestly, it's really hard to argue against that, you know. They've done really well this past 24 years.
Yeah.
So, big shouts to them. It all started with, Coach Jim Calhoun. He was such a good coach. Coached lots of future NBA stars, Rip Hamilton, Ray Allen. And then they won one with
Ben Gordon.
Yeah, they won.
Okafor.
Yeah, and then they won one with Kemba Walker as well. Kevin Ollie was their coach.
With Shabazz Napier.
Yeah, with a young Shabazz Napier. And then, of course, these last two ones under the great
Dan Hurley.
He's becoming a really good college coach.
Yes, he is. So, by the looks of it, if you place it across the timeline, UConn has won in every decade since 2000. Because 2004, the Ben Gordon and Emeka Okafor Championship. 2014, under Coach Kevin Ollie, the Shabazz Napier one. 2023 and 2024, Dan Hurley. And of course, Dan Hurley, he's not the one for the meek or bashful. This guy is something else. He's not afraid to call referees to their face. You're clowns.
Yeah.
Right? He's not afraid to do that. But he did say a very stark statement about how UConn has been running college basketball for the last 25 years or so. And for you, Mook, that's, what? They're part of for me, the college basketball new blood royalty. Because the old blood royalty
So they're not a blue blood yet, in your opinion?
Do you put them in the same class of a UCLA, a Duke,
Kentucky? I think so. I think they're warranted enough. They've proven themselves enough as a basketball program.
All right. But of course, we did mention about Dan Hurley. But for me, another unsung hero in his coaching staff is his assistant coach, Luke Murray, who, by the way, is the son of comedian Bill Murray. All right. Comedians are so good about making key observations about their environment.
Right.
And putting a little spin on it. Diba? And Luke Murray, by the way, is a keen observer of EuroLeague basketball, Japan B-League basketball. And he tries to take bits and pieces of that and implement it to UConn system. Do you see some of that?
I definitely do see some of that. Over this past year, and especially on the come up to March Madness, so many YouTube videos have been popping up on my feed about, how the UConn offense is really so potent. It thrives on misdirections. It thrives on so many screens, so many things happening where, if you're a defense and you're trying to defend this team for 30 seconds, you're going to get lost like 10 seconds in. You're going to lose a man and they're going to score. So I definitely get the influences. The cutting is spectacular. Almost everyone is moving almost all the time in their offense. And, most of the time they score. So shout out to Luke Murray. He's really... It mirrors a lot of the NBA offenses we see that are really good. Denver does a lot of cutting. Golden State during the prime did so much movement with Steph and Clay. So I see some of that. And, of course, the EuroLeague influence. You also see the passing is so fluid. And, very good program to just observe and almost emulate, too. They're becoming one of those programs where it's become... These plays are going to be taught by different coaches,
right,
all around. Not just the States, but then all around the world.
Right. So, going now to the title game itself, Mook. So, as we were talking about earlier, we indeed got the number 1 team in the nation versus the number 2 team in the nation, because you can clearly see here in this game, just UConn's dominance just surfaced over Purdue. Like, it felt like a 1-on-5 with Purdue heavily relying on Zach Edey post-ups, which I like, but it's not gonna win you. It's not gonna win you national title against UConn, right? Yeah. And I want to get to the much-awaited matchup that we've all been looking forward to, and that's the big on big key matchup that you and I have been going back and forth these past few days. So my newspaper headline for this would be Kling Kong versus Zach Zilla. All right? And, okay, so Mook, Edey did put up 37, which is no small feat. But you have to give credit to Donovan Clingan for making him work to get to his spots.
Zach Edey started the game really strong, Clingan was almost holding on for dear life during those first few minutes because he was trying to settle in. And, Zach Edey is a big guy. He's taller and bigger than Donovan Clingan. So he got tossed around a little, got bumped around a lot. But, once that game settled in, especially once UConn's defense was able to clamp down on the rest of Purdue's starting 5, then he was able to just make Edey go where he wanted to go, defend him really well, double when they needed. And you're right, 37 points for Zach Edey, no small feat. But when the rest of the team only scores 23 points, it's very hard to win.
True.
It's very hard to win, especially on that level.
Right. So let's go now to Kling Kong, okay? Yeah. Donovan Clingan, whom I think is one of 2 major beneficiaries of this strong March Madness run. The first one is BJ Burns from NC State, Zach Zebo 2.0. Like
Gen Zebo.
Gen Zebo. I see what you did there. But Donovan Clingan, he's zoomed up to, I think, number 3 in some mock drafts. Yeah. So my initial comp for him was Walker Kessler. And you see it, 7-footer, good rim protector.
Good hands.
But with his showing in March Madness, I think he might be more than that.
Mm-hmm. No, definitely. He runs the floor really well.
Yes.
The mismatch of Edey, the style of play rather between Edey and Clingan is just night and day. You see like the traditional big man, the Tim Duncan like post-ups with Zach Edey. And then on the other side, you have this athletic, very lanky, tall person in Donovan Clingan who just runs up and down the floor all the time, on offense and on defense. He's so excited to run the break. UConn loves to run when they have their early offense. So that rim run is so essential to their offense as well. So, it was so exciting to see this whole run because he was pretty dominant this whole March Madness, this whole NCAA tournament, blocking shots, running the floor, like I said. Yeah. Almost even, he looked like the leader of the team. He really did. And, he's a third-year player and he's a pretty up there in age as well. So he has that experience. So I think it will just translate right away in the NBA. And I think it's right that I wouldn't say he's top 3. I think there are like a lot of overseas players who have more potential. But then as like a system big, I think he's gonna do really well under like young teams, and we can talk about teams who might draft him later, but I'm saying I can see him on the Grizzlies right now. When
Same.
everyone's coming back for the Grizzlies with help for Jaren Jackson Jr., I think he's gonna do. He could possibly thrive in Memphis.
Because in the draft, which we're gonna get to in a few weeks from now, in the draft, a lot of top players in atop some mock draft boards, you're banking on projection, right? Who could they be? But with Klingon, you're already getting certainty in key traits demanded of a center in 2024.
Right.
So you got your rim protection, you got your vertical spacing, you have your rebounding. Add to that the soft hands, the good energy. So you're getting and screening. He sets a lot of screens in UConn's offense. So immediately you're getting, hey, we have short traits that we could implement in our team with Klingon, right? There's no if you're projecting him, he's gonna be your front runner, your star. Not really.
No.
But in terms of role player dependability, he's there.
Right.
And
I think his age also contributes for a lot of that. He's played for 3 years now under Dan Hurley in UConn, so he's had experience with that offense, and as we said, that offense does emulate a lot of NBA offense. So you just plug him into like a system, an NBA system, and I'm pretty sure he's gonna do the exact same thing he's doing, because you're right. As a screener, UConn's offense, they misdirect you because you always think the ball's gonna go to whoever he's screening, but it goes to the exact opposite guy and the other wing. So he's such a big distraction, and a good distraction if he's part of your offense. So I can see him in so many situations in the NBA where he can just be a backup big, a very reliable backup big as well, and down the line, I can see him starting as well. Just like a really, really solid starting center, for a playoff team.
Right.
I'm gonna say that right now.
right, if you need a true five, like Klingon can step into that role. So you did mention Memphis. I'm thinking about him in OKC, like where you allow Chet to freewheel, be your more your mobile attack point, your hub, and then Klingon can take care of the rest of the rim protection, the rebounding, the interior presence.
Yeah, because that's what we had. OKC was knocked during the trade deadline for not getting a big, that they might need in the playoffs. They're doing really well until now to end the season. So you're right. They do down the line. They do need a big because you do have Victor Wembanyama coming up. You still have Nikola Jokic who's still dominating. So you have Chet Holmgren who is a pretty good big, pretty young, but then you still need a little bit more insurance and I think a lot more height.
Yes.
If you're gonna survive in the West.
Yes.
Yeah.
There was even this mock I saw in the Ringer where they mocked Donovan Klingon to San Antonio, and I'm like, can you even step foot inside the paint with Wemby and Klingon? I don't think so.
Yeah, no. I think the spacing, the offense spacing on that one, if that's their defense too in the middle, I think people are gonna go crazy. It's gonna go back to like the 80s style of spacing where everyone's just, trying to run so that no one's still inside.
Right. So now, okay, we talked about Kling-Kong. Let's go over to the other end. The guy we was banging bodies with, Zach Zilla, Zach Edey. All right. Mookie, for the last, I don't know how many days, has been telling me he is the perfect guy in the wrong era, right?
Yeah.
He's the perfect 90 center in the 2020s, and it just doesn't fit, right? It's a much different game. A 300-pound, 7'4" big who has the body of a Yao Ming, reminds you of a Mark Eaton type of guy who played for Utah in the 80s. That's all true, Mook. I do acknowledge every single point that you made. But on the flip side, it's impossible to ignore the numbers he's been putting up in this tournament. He's not half that, right? I mean, my rationale for drafting ED is if guys like Nurkic, Zubac can play spot minutes. I'm not asking him to be a star, just spot minutes. You know, eat up some space down low. Maybe he can fill that role. What do you think about that?
You know, I was really hard on Zach Edey because, you know, but then obviously the stats don't back me up. You know, even the awards, the accolades, he's won back-to-back National Player of the Year. So, I'm such a doubter of, you know, just how he plays. It's more of the play style because I really can't see it translating in the NBA now. Because, you know, I've been saying for the past few weeks to you, sir, like, he's just Yao Ming, you know? It's like we're in 2002 again and it's just Yao Ming.
Yeah.
So, and, you know, of course, Yao Ming turned out to have a pretty good NBA career, you know, except for those injuries. But then, you know, Zach Edey plays, you know, just around the ring, doesn't have a shot, a reliable shot. He blocks shots, you know, he's a really good presence on defense. But then aside from that, it's just, I really don't see it. I really don't see it translate in the NBA. Even as like a Zubac type or a Nurkic type who grabs rebounds and assists. I think people are just going to always want the switch on him because he's not that mobile.
Right.
We talked about Klingon a while ago. I think he could move. He could pivot. He could like rotate his feet a little bit. But then I don't see that with Zach Edey.
Okay. It's gonna make sense to draft Edey if you're like a Milwaukee. My perfect example. You have
okay.
an aging Brook Lopez. You might need some insurance for him down the line. Then Edey's available. Why not?
Why not?
But you're not gonna go and say, you know what? We're trading up to get the Zach Edey.
We're giving him the ball.
No. Look, Mook, here's a stat. In March Madness, he scored off post-ups 64% of possessions. You're not gonna do that in the NBA.
Yeah, you're not. It's dead. The post game is dead.
Right. But it's gonna make sense for teams in mid first round, late first round. If you need an insurance big, then if he's available, take a gamble on him. But if this was a college draft, just purely college draft, like he would be number one.
He would be number one. He's very dominant that way. And can I just say all of that by saying I'm really bad at looking at college bigs going to the draft. Like I was wrong about Evan Mobley a few years ago. I thought he was gonna make out and turn out, and you know he turned out pretty good. So, you know, I might be wrong on this, but at the same time, the stats, you know, just the way he plays, you see it. It's just so 2000s.
Yes.
You know, and in college you can get away with that because that's your offense. He's a big guy. You can just keep on passing him the ball. You can keep feeding him inside. But then in the NBA with, you know, Embiid who likes to play in the perimeter, Jokic who you're gonna have to follow from, you know, he's the one bringing down the ball. You know, and then you have you have Wemby who also brings down the ball and also runs the floor. So, you're right. Maybe in a Milwaukee, you know, just for like the true anchor when Giannis is outside the paint, you know, that could work. Or maybe on a contender. But then I don't think his NBA career is going to be a lot different from his college career.
Right. Okay. Fair enough.
Yeah.
Fair enough. So, we're done with the bigs.
Yeah.
Look, let's go now to some other players who stood out this March Madness. And I'll start first by mentioning a guy who played with Donovan Klingon who really impressed in his freshman season. And I'm talking about Stephon Castle. Stephon Castle now, he's been, you know, highly regarded for his excellent perimeter defense at 6'6". It's just that his jumper is a little bit wonky. Like teams would leave him open for that.
Yeah.
But let's go back to when they faced Alabama, right? Coach Nate Oates, you know, he saw that, Castle's only shooting, 26% from free. Leave him open.
Yeah, they
Just leave
sagged
him
off
open.
him, yeah.
Sagged off of him. For a while, it was working.
Yep.
But then, Castle hit a few, drilled it, regained his confidence, and then once he connected with some of that, like, he was able to help UConn, you know, get their offense
Get on
back.
that run, yeah.
Right? And that shows a lot about the poise of this young man. Like he's not rattled by like teams may know my weaknesses, but let me work around that.
Yeah.
But let me find another way to contribute to my team winning.
Yeah. Because I think that's part of UConn's offense, like taking what the defense gives you and reading, where there's like a small hole in that defense where that's where you'll go. And, Stephon Castle was known as a slasher going into March Madness. He wasn't known as a shooter. But then, you're right, when Alabama was giving him space, he got confidence, and that's how he made those. And then once the defense was like, okay, now he's making shots, that's when he started to move around again. That's when he started to cut. That's when he started to, pass, screen, cut again. It's really just how UConn and Dan Hurley just use all of their players really well. Like, even in that national championship game, you have guys like, Newton, who was the outstanding Final Four player.
He's their connector.
He is their connector. He really, Cam Spencer was really good. Even Samson Johnson, who's the backup of Donovan Clingan, played really well this entire March Madness. So it's just the potency of that UConn offense and just the execution every time they go down the floor, especially when they're on their run.
Yeah.
There was a trend in the Final Four and the national championship game of how, by the first half was pretty close. UConn was almost like reading. It's almost like a boxing match. They're reading the defense, the offense of their opponents, and then after the second half, it's like, we're gonna leave you. This is how we, stretch our lead more and more. We're gonna dominate on offense, and then we're just gonna negate your star player or the rest of your team except for your star player on defense. So for Stephon Castle, I think he's also pretty high on some people's big boards, and rightfully so. We saw so much potential in him. You can see, a lot of slasher type, really good defensive player that, a lot of teams need. You can put him in a contender right away, and you can put him in an up-and-coming team because the way he played in UConn, that will help him anywhere he goes.
True. Like my initial comparison for him was a Sean Livingston type. I see the same length, the same wingspan, the same build. Hopefully, if he can get a little bit of that mid-range touch of Sean Livingston, then he can become a more complete player.
Because I think shooting will come. That's always the thing for draft prospects. When going to the draft, you're like, well, he's not really good of a shooter. But then, shooting's, I think, the easiest to improve upon when you're in the NBA, because that's what you're always gonna do, right? You have all of the trainers at your disposal, all of your coaches are in your ear. So I think he's gonna develop that. But the things that he has now are just so essential to all 30 teams.
Right. But one guy who is known to be a knockdown shooter from the get-go is the guy who we're gonna talk about next. Mook, and in his final game of his college career, he shot 6 for 12 from free, 37 points, and I'm talking about Tennessee's Dalton Knecht. What do you think about this guy?
I think he's Duncan Robinson. We see Duncan Robinson, how he made the transition from Michigan, also kind of a shooter, but no one expected him to be in Miami, helping them reach finals appearances. So I think he's just a really dead-eye shooter who knows how to move. That's really, you talk about Zach Edey, living in another time. This is very contemporary, moving around screens, looking for a three-point shot, and he has it, I can't wait for him to go to, he's projected as like a middling first-round pick, mid-lottery, 20s-ish. And if he goes to a playoff caliber team, he's gonna play right away.
Yeah.
I genuinely believe that he's that good of a shooter. Like, if you give Dalton Knecht to like a Philadelphia who needs shooters, they got Buddy Hield for Embiid, so they would badly need more shooting, or even a Milwaukee, like you said, because they definitely need more shooters around Giannis as well. So I think he's NBA ready. That's the thing that was thrown around a lot. They gave Purdue a run for its money. Zach Edey was also dominant in that game, but Dalton Knecht definitely showed his worth during that game as well.
For sure. So, again, certainty. Shooting, he provides lots of it. He provides that extra firepower that you need. It won't be crazy to think that he can be your third option, right?
Yeah.
Like, or even low-level starter.
Yeah.
Kind of that range. So, Dalton Connect, good on you. Right. Next guys we're going to talk about, Mook, they didn't have a good March Madness at all. I mean, first round, they got booted out. But that still won't change how NBA teams perceive them as potential lottery picks. And we're talking about the Kentucky duo of Reed Sheppard and Rob Dillingham. So, both come off the bench for Kentucky, but they're still projected to go top 5 nevertheless.
Well, they're very dynamic, as you know. Like Reed Sheppard, I got to watch his highlights a bit earlier last year because that's when Kentucky rather was starting to get their groove, and that's when both of them started to get more notoriety because Reed Sheppard plays really well on ball, and he's not that big, but he's such a competitor. Even on defense, you can see it, and Calipari knew how to use that. Sadly, it didn't materialize in the NCAA, but I think both of them have so many things that Kentucky's known for producing guards at like a really good rate to make it to the NBA, and it's hard to miss on these two, especially when you see the body of work despite how their season ended. You see how well they played, and I think it's hard for these young teams who can never have too many guards, with lots of injuries, you can never tell. But even a few days ago, I think Rob Dillingham expressed on ESPN how he would love to play with Victor Wembanyama. I can see it. Wemby needs a very good point guard to give him the ball, and Rob Dillingham is a really good point guard.
Right.
So I see maybe either of them, if not both of them, go maybe top 8, which is very likely. But if I'm gonna choose between the two of them, I like Reed Sheppard's game more.
Right. Because of the pace and vision, the shooting. Arguably, he's the best shooter in this draft,
Yes.
right? Outside of Dalton Connect.
Yeah.
He's there. Great feel for the game, Reed Sheppard. With Dillingham, I do like him as well, but he's more of the electric, the handles, change of speed. He has the jittery handle, the live dribble passing. So it's two different types of guards, of ball handlers. So if you're looking for more of the guy who, is more, I think, hard-nosed, Kirk Heinrich type, that's Reed Sheppard.
Yeah.
If you're looking for a bit more flair and explosiveness, you go with Rob Dillingham.
Rob Dillingham reminds me a lot of Bones Highland. When he was being played in Denver, he has that jolt of energy. If you bring him off the bench, he's going to give you instant offense. So I think he can thrive on that for a bit, and then once he gets his game settled in the NBA, I think he can do more damage as a more settled type, like how Reed Sheppard is, how you described him.
But just to add to the conversation, Mook, there's another guard who got my attention this March Madness, and he's a little bit undersized. He's 5'11", comes from Alabama. I'm talking about Mark Sears, whom, because of the look, the appearance, reminds many people of a Jalen Brunson.
Yes.
Where, Jalen Brunson has more of the pure scoring ability, whereas Mark Sears relies on, because he's undersized, right? He relies more on the craftiness, right? Jalen Brunson gets some of his points in the mid range, whereas Alabama, they didn't allow Mark Sears to shoot anything from the mid range.
Yeah.
He was attacking
either or shooting from 3,
or shooting from way out. But I see the comp with Jalen Brunson, but my question is, does he have the same pitbull type intensity as Jalen Brunson?
I think we saw a little bit of it in the Final Four. The fact that they made it to the Final Four, we saw him, show up game after game, and that UConn team was really just hard to beat. That second half blew Alabama away like really quickly, sent them packing. But you can't discount, the size of Mark Sears is very also similar to Jalen Brunson's, which is why honestly I gravitated towards him. Like when I watched Alabama this whole month, I was like, this guy is just like Jalen Brunson. Like, he's left-handed as well. Like he drives like him. He doesn't have the mid-range package, doesn't have the post-up game like Jalen Brunson did, even when he was in Villanova. But I think he looks like a better shooter to start his NBA career, unlike Jalen Brunson, who had to work for it. So I'm really excited for him. Hopefully he gets picked to a good team, because in terms of that pitbull attitude, if he has it, I think he does. Just not in the same level yet as the Jalen Brunson who even entered the NBA with that pitbull. He won in Villanova, but I can see him being maybe a backup point guard who shows everyone that he can start for some teams. If a team wants to give him a max or a better contract, I think he can definitely make his way towards that. So yeah, Mark Sears, someone to watch in this NBA draft as well.
For sure. So guys, you've heard the standout players for Mookie and I this March Madness. We just recapped the national title game. But hold on, because when we get back, we're going to talk more about some other news in college basketball. So stay tuned. Keep it locked in here.
Time out. Arcade Sports continues right after this.
You're listening to the voice of the Blue Eagle.
You know what it is.
On the Simulcast Radio. Radyo Katipunan, 87.9.
It's time for The Music Class. Join us for an evening of learning music and appreciating the art behind every hum, tune, and beat. Listen to engaging performances and insights from some of the top and upcoming musicians in the scene today. Tune in every Tuesday evening here on The Music Class. Let the music class begin.
Mga Katipuneros, it's time to level up! Your top variety program showcasing the best in media and other fields, as we feature the most loved personalities and the best practices of what we truly refer to as Magis. Together with multi-awarded multimedia guru Mr. Noel Ferrer, let's all level up every Friday from 3 to 6 p.m. here on Radyo Katipunan, 87.9 FM.
Alright guys, we are not yet done with our college basketball news this afternoon. So, Mookie, we talked about some standout players from March Madness, but there's another college player, who did make headlines because he just declared for the NBA draft, and he's also entering the transfer portal at the same time. So, Bronny James is potentially one and done, but he will definitely be moving on from USC next season. So, two quick things about this. If Bronny does decide to transfer, I know LeBron Sr. loves Coach K and Duke, right? But there's no more Coach K. Right? Ohio State, maybe. But the more logical choice for me, for Bronny, is small school, Duquesne, coached by his childhood friend, Drew Joyce. That might be an option for Bronny. But if Bronny decides to enter the draft, let's be frank, teams will flat out say to him, you know what, you're a second rounder at best. Ceiling, maybe a free and D guy. But remember that the draft now is played out across 2 days, right? So for me, this allows LeBron Sr. more time to plan where he will sign next, right? Because he's exploring free agency. So unrealistic are young teams who already have a core that they're trying to build on. So Spurs are out, Thunder are out. That means potentially the teams that will draft Bronny James are contenders who think they are a LeBron piece away from winning everything. So I have 3 options for you.
Okay.
Tell me which one is more likely.
Okay.
A reunion with Cleveland, right?
Okay.
You can, as I told you before, you have to choose. Is it Mitchell or Garland? Or you let go of Jarrett Allen, you let go of Donovan Mitchell.
Right.
You build with Garland and Mobley. On top of that, add your LeBron, bring in Bronny James. the New York Knicks. You form a good trio with Jalen Brunson and Julius Randle, and LeBron has many times displayed outright or subtle intentions about wanting to be in New York. Or you can go with the Philadelphia Sixers, who have the most cap space this season. So among the three, who may or might draft Bronny James?
I'd like to see him with Embiid. I think that's the right answer, Philadelphia, because I think it just makes, in terms of fit wise, I think it makes sense. Because I think LeBron would love playing with Maxey, and in terms of Bronny, I think he would improve more under Nick Nurse. Nick Nurse is a really good coach who likes to develop young players. I mean, that's why we see Maxey now just completely unleashed because Nick Nurse gave him the ball. So I think, in terms of Bronny going to New York and LeBron following there, I think that's just too. I think that's almost too scripted, and I don't think he would want to go back to Cleveland. Like, I think he's done with that chapter of his life. So I think Philadelphia is the right and honestly only logical destination for Bronny if ever he gets drafted. But I think it was really weird for him to even announce that he was gonna try to be drafted this year, because he was on a very bad USC team, and then he came from that carjack arrest to start the season, so he was recovering the whole time, and he wasn't even a starter on that USC team that was bad. So he had a really mediocre season, and I would just love him to at least we see more and more players who stay in college more. We see that a lot more in the women's game, obviously, but then in the men's side, with UConn and Zach Edey, we see players who develop more and more as they stay in their respective schools. So I would have liked him to, join the transfer portal most definitely, because I don't think USC was the right fit for him. But then, go to a better program, or go to a program where they will definitely use your abilities and nurture you to become, not as good as your dad, obviously.
Yeah.
But then your own player. So, and if he gets drafted, it's going to be a ploy, definitely, like a Game of Thrones type. We have your son.
Yes.
So you're going to want to join us in a few years. So, that's going to be really good drama. That's going to be a lot of news around the NBA. But for now, I'm pretty disappointed in him that, he decided to make himself available for the draft.
Let's make things simpler, Mok. If LeBron James weren't his father, Bronny would not be on the draft radar. It's that simple, right? I mean,
you would need all 4 years.
The name says LeBron James Jr. So, right? I mean, because it's a package deal.
Yes.
Right?
From day one.
You draft Bronny with the hope of getting his father on your team. It's that, there's no other ulterior motive for that.
Yeah.
But okay. To put into perspective, Mok, here's what an NBA general manager was quoted as reviewing Bronny's NBA readiness. So, Bronny is nowhere near ready. He should go back to school to develop at his own pace, or he risks getting lost in the shuffle whether or not he's playing with his dad. Agree or disagree?
I definitely agree. Because I think Bronny does want to be his own player. That's the reason, I think, why he went to college in the first place, right? Because, he could have gone pro. He could have gone pro somewhere else, entered the draft that way. But then he wanted to go to a program, and he wanted to go to college. Like, LeBron wanted him to go to college to try that atmosphere. So it's really weird for him to, leave that atmosphere, leave that place where you can hone your skills more, not really separate from your dad, because that's impossible, but, make your own name for yourself. Because we've seen a lot of, sons do that with talented fathers as well. So that whoever that anonymous general manager is right on the money. That's not being like disrespectful or anything. It's just the truth.
Right.
So we'll see. His teammate in USC, Isaiah Collier, will definitely get drafted, I think.
He did declare.
I think he is really good. He has a lot of potential as well. So I think he's safe. But in terms of Bronny, I think if no one drafts him or no one has that plan ahead attitude of, let's get him, let's draft Bronny mid-40s, almost by the end of the draft, and that's the bait. Now we wait for a few months if LeBron will take the bait. But for NBA teams, especially now, where a lot of teams are like really competitive and have their own identity per team, except for the really bad ones. I don't think they don't have, their timetable does not match with LeBron's timetable. So it's really hard for the father-son duo to be coming this early at least next season.
Which is why Cavs, Knicks, Sixers, to be honest, that's not happening because most likely LeBron will, it's his plan all along, stay with LA, get Bronny to play with him in LA and finish everything there, right?
Yep. Because that's really the Hollywood ending. That's the reason why he went to LA in the first place was for. So yeah.
I mean, his investments are there, his companies are there, the whole family is there. So, I mean, timing-wise, let's see.
Let's see.
But
unlikely. Very unlikely.
Anyway, speaking of movement, there's another guy on the move in college basketball. And this one's a coach, Mook, because the Pied Piper of college basketball, Kentucky head coach John Calipari, who has been with the Wildcats for 15 seasons, is now the head coach of the Arkansas Razorbacks. And my only question for this is, Mook, will Arkansas become the next one and done destination for future NBA draft picks?
I hope not, because I think John Calipari is a pretty good coach. Because, other than his Kentucky career, which was, successful in his own terms, where he got the most players, he got the most stars to make it to the NBA.
Not on national championships, okay?
Not on national championship. Not on the college level. That's not what his goal was in Kentucky was for. His goal was to get these players eligible for the draft, make them look really good, and then bring them to the next level. And he did a really good job of that. That was his goal. He did really good.
Yes.
But, before that, he was a really good coach, I think he was a coach for Memphis for a few seasons. So he was he had that underdog type of quality towards him, a chip on his shoulder, where he wanted his teams to do well in college. It didn't matter. Of course, it mattered to him if some of his players made it to the NBA, but then he wanted to win in college. And I think Arkansas is that type of school. I think Arkansas wants to win because they haven't won a lot of, definitely, they're a good program. They're a very middling program, but I don't think, they're not a blue blood. They're definitely not like a Villanova or Gonzaga. So, I think that's the reason why they hired him. They want, that guy who, our coach is the star, and then hopefully his recruiting tactics, his recruiting process that he learned in Kentucky would, make us a destination. But at the same time, hopefully, they don't become one and dones, and instead try to build something with Arkansas.
Let's play a little game of college basketball multiverse, where Mookie Borja is a point guard for Montverde Academy or something like that. Or
I'm point guard of Cooper Flag, yeah.
or something like that. Or Oak Hill, right? Oak Hill Academy, something like that.
IMG, yeah.
IMG, right? You're a top 15 high school recruit. Do you play for a Dan Hurley where you're competing for national championships and the glory that comes with it? Or do you play for a John Calipari who probably won't get you probably will get you a conference title, but in the next 2 years you're a surefire.
You're gonna be a prospect.
You're gonna be a
lottery,
surefire.
yeah,
or mid to late round pick, right? So who do you want to play for? Like a coach who gets you to the big dance, or who gets you to the big league?
That's the dilemma of some players. Honestly, I would go for I'd really go for being in UConn because they're already a successful program aside from being a winning program right now. And if you do, and if you're doing well there, you're definitely gonna make it to the NBA also. So, it's hard to root for Calipari's process because some people would say the one and done kind of ruined the men's game a little bit because of how fast the turnover is, especially now with the transfer portal as well. So, he has that, but then he won with Anthony Davis, and look how Anthony Davis panned out. He turned out to be really good. His one of his first Kentucky teams had John Wall, DeMarcus Cousins, and Eric Bledsoe, and all of them worked out. And even years after that, Karl Anthony Towns and Devin Booker, Tyrese Maxey, De'Aaron Fox, Bam Adebayo, and Malik Monk.
Or even at Trey Lyles.
And even Trey Lyles, right? So you see all of these, these big names attached to Coach Cal. So you see greatness on the next level. But if you're really focused on wanting to, do well in college, I think you'd go for the more winning program. And that would be my decision.
Fair answer. Because, it really depends on your priorities as a student athlete, right?
Yeah.
If, like for some people, it's a necessity that you get drafted because you have to support the family back home.
Right.
Correct?
Mm-hmm.
But for some, hey, let's maximize everything about your college experience. Whether it's in the classroom or, competing for something greater.
Yeah.
And then you go for those programs like UConn.
And that's what I respect about those, programs like UConn, Villanova, Gonzaga, even Arizona to some extent. They have the presence. They're pretty well known around the country, around the world. But then, when you get to that system, that we're going to always contend, not just for, ACC Big East titles, but we're going to make it to March and we're going to compete the whole month. So that allures me more than, you go to Duke or you go to UNC for a year, you make a name for yourself, and then you're off to the NBA. I think there's a lot more improvement. You can be a better player if you stay longer, and that was proven for so many years,
Right.
So that's the route I would take.
Right. Same here. Like for me, if I were in that position, like I do miss the days where players would stay all like 3 or 4 years. And you could see it in legends like Lou Alcindor when he played for UCLA and John Wooden. Like they grew up not only as players but as men, right? Under the tutelage of these wise coaches. So, student athletes, they do have different priorities, but Mookie, I think we do share some common ground in that. All right, so guys, we'll just take a quick break, and now we're shifting the discussion over to women's college basketball when we return. Keep it locked here.
Time out. Arcade Sports continues right after this.
Radyo Katipunan, 87.9 FM.
Calling on all young male professionals. Do you wish to live an extraordinary life? Are you tired of the routine and mundane and long for a dynamic, adventurous, and even dangerous life? Do you wish to make your life count and hope to make an impact long after you're gone? Do you wish to live a life of service to society, to country, and to dear Mother Earth? Then you are the one we are looking for. Consider the Society of Jesus. Join the church's gallant army and turn your world upside down. Call the Jesuits Vocations Promotions Team 426-6101, local 3406. Once again, 426-6101, local 3406.
All right, guys. We just finished our March Madness recap for the men's side of things. Now, Mookie, we go over to women's college basketball, which has seen a resurgence, an explosion, you name it, in this 2024 March Madness edition. And of course, we first have to, give a huge shout out to Coach Dawn Staley and her South Carolina Gamecocks for emerging as the national champions. A dominant 48-0 season.
Perfect season.
Ending up with a 87-75 win versus the Iowa Hawkeyes. And let's first talk about Coach Dawn Staley first. I mean, WNBA legend, just a leadership masterclass from her.
She's honestly the best coach in college basketball. Men's or women's. For me, she's the best coach in college basketball in the US right now, because the way what I love about her coaching style is she treats her players like, she treats a friend. You can see it the way they celebrate with each other. She's very close to each and every one of her players. We see that with her former players as well. When Aaliyah Boston was covering for ESPN, she was always beside Coach Dawn Staley when she was there, and especially Aja Wilson, who was almost like the catalyst for that for this pro start of South Carolina's dominance in the women's game. So I just love the way she approaches coaching as, I'm talking to you as not someone superior to you, but someone who wants you to get better. I see you as, we're friends, but then I will keep on pushing you. I will make sure that, we get the best out of you. And you can see it. That the reason a perfect season in women's NCAA is, is very special, but we've seen it before because of UConn, the women's UConn team always dominating in the 2010s. But then it's still very impressive to go undefeated for a whole season.
And also for me, props to Coach Dawn Staley for being a true sportsman in every sense of it.
Yes.
Because when she was up there in that podium, she did give mad props to one Caitlin Clark by saying, you know what? You are one of the GOATs because you single-handedly took our game to greater heights. Like, you can be just immersed in, okay, we just won the national title, where we're elated.
We beat you.
But no. She goes out of her way to give special mention to one Caitlin Clark. And, Mookie, let's get the elephant out of the room.
Let's face it.
Caitlin Clark is, just a supernova superstar who has captivated national interest, international attention. Just, like, hooper to hooper. What amazes you about her game?
I think it's the range. It really is the shooting for me, because that's what pops out immediately. But then when you watch more and more of her games, you just get to see what an incredible passer she is. Because that's the thing that, excites me the most about her, and I can't wait for her to show that in the pros, is just how much of a gifted passer she is. She passes really well. Full court passes, bounce passes. Her vision is almost like Steph Curry, not just shooting, but the quick passes, And I've just never noticed that a lot in the women's game. You see a lot of Dawn Staley was a pretty good point guard herself. She was a really good passer, but then just the speed of her passes, the recognition right away is just something I can't get enough of as like a pure hooper and someone who just watches the game almost every day. Just I appreciate people who have the IQ and the recognition to see who's open right away, where to pass it, and what angle to pass it in. And she's spectacular.
And you can say, in that regard, like, you can appreciate the women's game even more because you can make the argument that it's more fundamentally sound than the men's game. Because you're not basing it off of size, athleticism, and physicality. No, you watch the women's game for the skill, the high skill level that they display. But apparently, some women's hoop legends aren't too pleased with Caitlin Clark. Several pros like Brianna Stewart, Sue Bird, Diana Taurasi have said that for Caitlin Clark to be considered the GOAT, she has to win an NCAA championship, which she was unsuccessful in doing so. And Taurasi even went further and said, you know what, the NBA is a whole different ballgame. It's grown women playing against you. But that still doesn't hide the fact that she might even be more talented than these guys.
Yeah. I think what she's done for the game, is something, of course, I have, like, this is a first for all of us. But then a lot of people are throwing around when Tiger, first made it in the golf scene, and how dominant and exciting it was to watch golf for the first time. How much excitement, how much energy Tiger Woods brought on the golf course during his start. And I kind of see that with Caitlin Clark a bit, just how much we've never seen this before. We've never seen a woman shoot that far before. We've never seen a woman make that many shots before. And I think those people, all three of those women are obviously champions in UConn as well. So I get where they're coming from. They're coming from a prestige and elite point of view, and they have won, of course, in the WNBA as well. But then I can't see how you try and not diss, but then temper everyone's excitement towards something that we've never seen before in Caitlin Clark.
True. And because of Caitlin Clark's brilliance, she, elevates everyone as well. That's why the names of Paige Beckers, Angel Reese, Juju Watkins, Hailey Van Liff,
Cameron Brink.
That's why they're, surfacing.
Right.
It's because of what Caitlin Clark has done. It's this wave of new excitement about the women's game that has rubbed off on them.
Yeah, and a big part of that is the women's NCAA have a rule that all players have to stay for 3 years before they can turn pro, and I think that's helped their game immensely because look, you get attached to these teams, you get attached to these players
the
who
fan
stay.
base.
Yeah, you get for 3 years. Like Juju Watkins is a freshman this year. She's gonna have 2 more years before she makes it. And I'm pretty sure she's gonna stay all 4 years because that USC team will keep getting better and better. Camila Cardozo, who won a few years ago with South Carolina, she's now the leader. She was now the leader, and she brought them perfection. She's a very big center. She's 6'7". She's gonna do really well in the draft as well. And even Paige Beckers, she obviously could have rivaled Caitlin Clark if she would have made herself eligible to be drafted, but she's gonna stay 1 more year. She wants to win a championship for UConn. Because UConn hasn't won in I think 5 years, which is a lot for them. That's a long wait for them. That's very unlike them for Coach Gino. So she wants to win for her school, and that's so refreshing to have that culture and how that elevates fans, just narratives, and people follow that. People follow stories, and it's so refreshing to see people care about women's basketball because of how good the product is. Because you can't stop watching Caitlin Clark. You can't stop watching Paige Beckers when they're going at each other. It's must-see TV.
Like, the product did improve with Sabrina Ionescu,
Right.
Kelsey Plum. But adding, on top of that talent, you add in these new faces with Caitlin Clark, Beckers, Angel Reese. I mean, you can just see, sponsorships, new media rights deals, carrying over into the women's game.
Right. And all of these players have, attitudes as well, right? They all have their own, personalities. They all have their own brand, So it's so fun to watch them build that, even in their respective programs, because then that program mirrors the program itself. Like, UConn is a winner. Paige Beckers she oozes like winning. She's so good. It was a shame for that Iowa UConn game to go down to the wire and end like that unceremoniously. But then she showed up to that game as well. Cameron Brink in Stanford. She was really good. She was the defensive player of the year for the women's team, and she won a national championship a few years ago as well. So she's gonna make it to the NBA as well, WNBA as well. So I can't wait for people to follow the WNBA because definitely the ratings of the WNBA will go up this year, no doubt. This draft is stacked, so this might be the turning point for that league. How much people will start noticing, start investing in the WNBA, which has been a growing brand. The product was always a little bit on and off depending who was healthy, who was playing. But now, these fresh grads are ready to make so much noise in the pros. And, those UConn oldies, those people who, even Sabrina Ionescu, who has made a few finals now, will have a run for their money because these new batch of women are going to dominate in a few years.
For sure. And you know what, Mook? This strangely reminds me, this newfound excitement about the women's game reminds me of what the NBA experienced in the 80s, where early 80s, everything was on tape delay.
Right.
You didn't have live games. And then here comes, Hick from French Lake, Larry Bird, and, City Boy from Michigan, Magic Johnson. And it just catapults a wave of newfound, again, excitement about the NBA game. And remember, the WNBA was only established in 1996. So technically, it's a new brand.
It's a very new brand, right?
It's a new brand. So to experience this injection of
it's electric. This draft, class.
right, of attention into the game, only bodes well for future seasons of this league. So can't wait for that.
I really can't wait. And Cameron Brink said it best. She had a quote. People saying I can name 5 women's basketball players in college, but not men. I think that's so funny and such a crazy shift. It is.
Yes.
Because, at the start of March, I would have agreed with her. I don't think I could have named 5 men's basketball players. But you know what? I could have named like 8 women's basketball players. So it was really so refreshing to have the women's game shine more than the men's this year. And I hope that continues because the product of women's NCAA is just getting better and better. We saw a lot of that starting, when Gino Oriema was dominating. But then we saw Notre Dame with Arike Agumbawale win, that off a buzzer beater. So it started with that, I think. And then now this is like the peak we're going to get with Caitlin Clark and the hysteria and mania that she caused around the world because of the way she plays. And it's amazing. She is going number 1 and rightfully so, and I think she's going to be a star in the WNBA.
Only great things to come for the women's game. And that is why I think, Mookie, we should give our Big Blue shout out to our own Lady Hoopers, our Ateneo women's basketball team, who unfortunately couldn't join us for this afternoon. But we do want to give a huge shout out to Jasmine Johnson, who's now playing in Australia. So all the best in your hoops career down under. And that does it for this episode of Radyo Katipunan Sports. Thank you so much to Teo. And thank you, of course, to my co-anchor as well, Mookie B. And most of all, thank you to our Blue Eagle Nation for tuning in and supporting Loyola Heights' #1 sports radio show. Guys, just send in your comments, greetings. And once again, this is Anthony saying goodbye, one big fight, and see you again soon, only here on Radyo Katipunan. Peace. Thank you so much.
Welcome to RK Sports, where we take you right into the action with the highlights, insights, and analysis of the sports scene in, around, across, and beyond the Ateneo. With your hosts, Anthony Perez and Mookie Borja. Katipunan. Game on.